Part 36.10, Surah Ya-Sin, the Heart of the Quran. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Sufi Essence with Hammad Syed. We now proceed with heightened intensity and rigorous intellectual focus to a deeply confrontational, critically important, and theologically revealing segment of the majestic Surah Ya-Sin, which is universally and rightfully revered as the very heart of the Quran. This powerful passage, encompassing verses 46 through 50, serves as a decisive and dramatic pivot point in the surah's grand majestic structure. Having just concluded the expansive, multifaceted arguments based on irrefutable cosmic signs, the perfect, measured orbits of the sun and moon, and the flawless rhythmic alternation of night and day, and the compelling historical signs, the Ark of Noah, peace be upon him, and the continuous, ongoing provision of ships and safe, effortless passage across the treacherous waters, the Quran now pivots sharply, directly, and compassionately to address the psychological, ethical, and spiritual root cause of the denier's persistent rejection, the persistent, pervasive arrogance, the deliberate, self-imposed spiritual blindness, and the mocking, utterly unjustified skepticism exhibited by the disbelievers in the undeniable face of manifest, overwhelming truth. This powerful passage meticulously and forensically dissects the psychological mechanisms of human obstinacy, revealing with absolute clarity that their rejection of the divine message is not, fundamentally, based on a lack of overwhelming, ubiquitous evidence, but rather on a willful, deeply rooted, and arrogant refusal to heed and acknowledge both the clear, explicit revelations of the Quran, the ayat at-tanzil, and the compelling, magnificent, and constant signs, ayat al-afok, of Allah's boundless creation, continuous bounty, and infinite sustaining power. The central, terrifying, ultimately unavoidable theme of this segment is the dramatic and instantaneous realization of the inevitable, promised day of judgment, Qiyamah. The deniers, in their reckless complacency and spiritual negligence, constantly mock the very time of this promise, demanding an immediate, specific date as a precondition for belief. Yet, the verses provide the ultimate definitive answer by depicting the sudden, irreversible, and cosmic arrival of the hour, capturing the precise, frozen moment of existential panic, complete physical incapacitation, and utter termination of all worldly plans and self-delusions, as all transient reality vanishes in an instantaneous, deafening blast. This profound analysis of the denier's deeply flawed spiritual state, sharply contrasted with their sudden, catastrophic, and final awakening, serves as an intense, non-negotiable warning for all believers to reject spiritual complacency, abandon trivial disputing, and seek genuine, immediate, and action-oriented ilm and taqwa in preparation for the inevitable. Kanza, Iman, Quran, Surah Ya-Sin, the Heart of the Quran, Chapter 36, verse 46. And no sign reaches them of the signs of their Lord, but they turn away from it. The 46th verse immediately establishes the central, persistent, and tragically self-destructive theme of the denier's spiritual condition: perpetual, deliberate, and comprehensive rejection. And no sign reaches them of the signs of their Lord, but they turn away from it. This categorical, sweeping assertion powerfully and concisely summarizes the core obstinate conduct of the disbelievers exposed throughout the entire previous sequence of arguments within the surah. The critical term sign ayah here is deployed in its most comprehensive, universal, and multi-layered sense, encompassing not just the specific, eloquent verses of the Quran being recited to them, the ayat at tanzil, but also the cosmic signs, the rhythmic stars, the day, the night, and the compelling historical signs, the ark, the fertile earth, the safe ships. The core tragedy of their self-inflicted plight lies in the universality and absoluteness of their rejection. No single sign, regardless of its clarity, its majesty, its factual magnitude, or its direct relevance to their own lives, is ever sufficient or persuasive enough to penetrate their hardened hearts and resistant minds. The crucial phrase "they turn away from it," anha-moratan, suggests and emphasizes not merely passive indifference or an understandable intellectual skepticism, but an active, willful, deeply ingrained, and persistent habit of spiritual deflection, deliberate aversion, and profound psychological resistance. They do not fail to see the signs due to intellectual incapacity. Rather, they actively choose, consciously and consistently, to physically and spiritually turn their backs on them, deliberately refusing the existential proof, the spiritual nourishment, and the undeniable guidance inherent and abundant in every single divine manifestation. This perpetual turning away is the inexorable root cause of their spiritual demise and their impending certain judgment, confirming decisively that their problem is not intellectual uncertainty or a deficit of evidence, but rather profound, self-inflicted spiritual arrogance. Istikbar. The consistent, catastrophic decision to prioritize their own whims, immediate material comfort, and blind, inherited traditions over the clear, abundant, and accessible evidence provided meticulously by Allah. This spiritual pathology ensures their inevitable ruin. Kanz al-Aman, Quran, Surah Ya-Sin, the heart of the Quran, chapter 36, verse 47. And when it is said to them, "Spend something out of what Allah has provided you," the infidels say to the believers, "Should we feed him whom Allah might have fed, if he pleased? You are not but in manifest error." The 47th verse provides a concrete, scathing, illuminating example of the deniers' practical arrogance and their elaborate, self-serving intellectual gymnastics, moving the analysis from the general denial of cosmological signs to the specific, arrogant rejection of the fundamental communal ethical command of charity and financial giving. And when it is said to them, "Spend something out of what Allah has provided you," the infidels say to the believers, "Should we feed him whom Allah might have fed, if he pleased? You are not but in manifest error." This verse brilliantly and precisely exposes the theological and ethical fallacy used to rationalize their spiritual stinginess, greed, and moral neglect. When commanded to spend in charity, which is both a practical acknowledgement of Allah's true, ultimate ownership of all wealth and a practical, tangible demonstration of active faith, the disbelievers respond with cold, mocking, and circular logic, employing a grossly distorted and misused version of the doctrine of divine will qadar as a shield against the sincere believers. Their loaded question, "Should we feed him whom Allah might have fed if he pleased?" is a grotesque misapplication of divine sovereignty. They attempt to mask their inherent greed, cruelty, and lack of basic human empathy behind a cynical theological argument, implying that if Allah truly, directly wanted the poor person to be fed, he would have done so directly without needing their flawed human intervention. Therefore, their participation is rendered religiously unnecessary and morally superfluous. This cynical argument reveals their complete lack of spiritual understanding of Rahman's merciful and testing system. Allah provides the wealth to them and then commands the believer to act as the willing, conscious conduit of that mercy and provision, making charity an ethical, necessary, and constant test of their faith, compassion, and submission to the divine order. Their final, sweeping dismissal, "You are not but in manifest error," is an ironic and profound inversion, where they arrogantly accuse the charitable, merciful believers of holding an erroneous belief, while their own self-serving, heartless, and contradictory philosophy is exposed as the true, manifest spiritual error Daloan Mubin. This denial of basic shared human empathy confirms their profound self-inflicted spiritual deterioration and their unworthiness of the wealth they hoard. Kanz al-Iman, Quran, Surah Ya-Sin, the heart of the Quran, chapter 36, verse 48. And they say, "When will this promise be, if you are truthful?" The 48th verse returns inexorably to the central, recurring theme of eschatology, capturing the denier's most persistent, defiant, mocking, skeptical challenge directed at the prophets and those who warn them of the inevitable future. And they say, "When will this promise be, if you are truthful?" The promise refers specifically and unambiguously to the day of resurrection, the final judgment, and the inevitable return for accountability, Qiyamah, which is the single most critical, non-negotiable point of contention between the believers and the skeptics. Their question, "When will this promise be?" is fundamentally not a sincere inquiry seeking constructive knowledge or genuine information. It is rather a purely rhetorical device used as a final, desperate attempt to dismiss and negate the message entirely, by demanding a fixed, immediate, and empirically verifiable date. They implicitly suggest that since the catastrophic event has not occurred yet, the entire prophecy and warning is false, imaginary, and merely a form of unfounded religious intimidation. This persistent, arrogant demand for a specific time stamp demonstrates their materialist, temporal, and inherently limited view of time, which contrasts sharply and tragically with Allah's eternal, boundless perspective and His wisdom in concealing the time. Their challenge is deeply rooted in their psychological need for worldly safety and reassurance. If the promised hour is always delayed or undefined, they feel temporarily safe, justified, and validated in their denial. The question itself is an act of defiance, conveniently ignoring the numerous signs of the hour already provided and treating the divine. Its promise is merely a human claim, subject to temporal verification, thereby actively rejecting the prophetic authority of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Kanzul Aman Quran, Surah Ya-Sin, the heart of the Quran. Chapter 36, verse 49. They await only one shriek which will seize them while they are disputing. The 49th verse delivers the ultimate, powerful, chilling answer to their arrogant skepticism and their mockery. Removing all ambiguity about the terrifying timing and nature of the day of judgment, they await only one shriek which will seize them while they are disputing. The certainty, the immediacy, and the total, overwhelming nature of the hour are established by describing its instantaneous, earth-shattering arrival. The entire cataclysm is described as being initiated and finalized by only one shriek, Sayatan Wahedatan, referring specifically to the first, utterly deafening, existence-terminating blast of the trumpet soar blown by the angel, Israfil, peace be upon him. This single, sudden, overwhelming sound will instantaneously seize all of creation and terminate all life. The critical, poignant, and highly condemnatory detail is the state in which this catastrophe will catch them while they are disputing. This perfectly and tragically encapsulates their spiritual negligence and profound misprioritization. They will be caught up in utterly trivial worldly arguments, materialistic concerns, and arrogant denials, like the one in verse 47, when the final, undeniable, and sovereign truth arrives. This single sound will instantly stop all argument, all movement, all worldly contract, and all trivial activity, rendering their constant trivial disputing utterly meaningless in the face of eternity. The stunning, absolute immediacy of the event contrasts sharply and dramatically with their mock demand for a distant date, emphasizing that the timing of their argument is not the determining factor. The overwhelming sovereign will of Allah is the sole and ultimate determinant. Kazelimin, Quran, Surah Ya-Sin, the heart of the Quran, chapter 36, verse 50. Then they will not be able to make a will, nor will they return to their families. The 50th verse concludes this segment by describing the absolute, immediate, and catastrophic finality of the hour initiated by the overwhelming shriek. Then they will not be able to make a will, nor will they return to their families. This verse paints a visceral and unforgettable picture of total incapacitation, the instantaneous collapse of all worldly systems, and the utter termination of all human connections and material responsibilities. The shock and suddenness of the event will be so complete and total that they will not even have the fraction of a second required to perform the most basic, necessary, and legally binding act of concluding their worldly affairs, make a will tausitan to settle outstanding debts or distribute inheritance. This profound detail powerfully emphasizes that all worldly concerns, no matter how pressing, legal, or urgent, will be instantly annihilated and rendered irrelevant. Furthermore, the second clause, nor will they return to their families, signifies the complete final, an absolute break from all domestic life, familial bonds, and human relationship. There will be no time for final farewells, no possibility of going back home for one last glance, and no moment to gather loved ones. All focus will shift instantaneously and irrevocably from the transient, material world to the eternal, terrifying reality of the hereafter. The sudden, total cessation of all human functions and connections underscores the ultimate sovereignty of the divine will and the irreversible beginning of accountability, making their previous disputing over material wealth and time an act of profound, existential, and inexcusable folly. Hadith, the necessity of vigilance, preparation, and the suddenness and finality of the hour. The verses describe the sudden, overwhelming, comprehensive nature of the first shriek that will instantaneously seize all mankind while they are preoccupied with trivial worldly affairs and engaged in needless disputing, verses 49 to 50. This powerful emphasis on utter suddenness is a core teaching regarding the day of judgment, intended specifically to keep the believer constantly vigilant, prepared, and spiritually alert throughout their lifespan. The Hadith provides the necessary practical imagery for cultivating this crucial spiritual state of preparedness. The Prophet, peace be upon him, taught, "The hour will be established while two men are spreading a garment before them, but they will not be able to fold it up. And the hour will be established when a man is carrying the milk of his she-camel, but he will not be able to drink it. And the hour will be established while a man is repairing his water tank, but he will not be able to use it. And the hour will be established while a man has raised a morsel of food to his mouth, but he will not be able to eat it." Bukhari Hadith, number 7121. This profound hadith, recorded in Sahih al-Bukhari, perfectly and viscerally illustrates the meaning and spiritual implication of the Quranic description. It provides specific, mundane, and universally relatable examples: spreading a garment for business, carrying milk for sustenance, repairing a water tank for life's necessities, raising food to the mouth for survival, to emphasize the ultimate suddenness and total finality of the shriek. The hour will not wait for the completion of any worldly task, contract, or obligation, including the time required for making a will or returning to one's family. The Hadith highlights that every single human endeavor, no matter how essential, will be cut short at the precise moment of its intended climax. This powerfully reinforces the core message of the verses: the denial, the arrogance, and the constant disputing of the skeptics will cease instantly and definitively, proving the overwhelming reality of the divine promise. For the believer, this hadith serves as a powerful, non-negotiable call to live every single moment with the highest degree of taqwa consciousness of Allah, ensuring that they are not caught in a state of spiritual negligence, but always ready for the immediate and eternal transition from the transient world to the everlasting reality. Let us now supplicate, drawing from the profound lessons of these verses, asking Allah to grant us a deeper understanding and to guide our every step. O Allah, the Lord of all signs, purify our hearts that we may never turn away from your truth in arrogance or denial. Protect us from the theological folly of those who refuse to spend what you have provided. Grant us constant vigilance and spiritual preparedness so that the terrifying shriek does not seize us while we are disputing over trivial matters. Ensure that our affairs are settled and our hearts are prepared for your presence, so that when the hour arrives, we are not among those who cannot make a will or return to their families, but are ready for your mercy and ultimate acceptance. May Allah illuminate your heart and mind with the light of this divine ilm. May He make your channel a beacon of guidance for all who seek spiritual clarity and truth. May your efforts be a source of immense reward, and may you be granted the highest stations of paradise. May the peace and blessings of Allah always be upon you and your loved ones. May He grant you unwavering steadfastness on the path of truth, and may your work be a testament to His magnificent names, Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. Amin.